tried this last year before I had the Taurus saw, and it was a total pain. But now that I have the saw, I'm thinking it will be a lot easier. So I think this one will be up next. Use the nichrome wire, not only for the hook, which you have to do, but also for the filament inside the light bulb. And it's a tougher wire to work with. So I think this year I'm going to do a few samples. I'll test one with copper. I'll test one with silver. Of course, all of them will have the nichrome hook. But I may make a few that have no embedded hook that you have to attach a bail to. So here is the light bulb plan for that ornament. And I need several pieces cut. I need the background, which is Tecta. I need a transparent color to be the bulb, a base, like where you would screw in the bulb. I used, I think, beige, and then some black stringers. First step is making a lot of cutouts. I started by tracing the shape with Sharpie and trying to cut it on the saw. And it's a saw that has water in the base that sprays onto the glass as you're cutting, so it washes the Sharpie right off. I picked up grease pens to trace the pattern. They work pretty well, much better than the Sharpie, but it still does wash off before you get the entire shape cut out. What I found is the very best is Sharpie and then put lip balm over it. This happens to be homemade lip balm, but it doesn't matter. You could use any lip balm. I would definitely go with the cheapest. And you just cover the Sharpie with the lip balm, and that puts a barrier so that the water doesn't go through. I'm using all that scrap from last year when I did my ornaments and I was trying to cut circles and having no luck at all. I did save all the pieces. So this year, they're going to turn into Christmas bulb ornaments. You really want the lightest transparency that you can get, because inside there is a wire filament that you want to be able to see. And if your glass is too dark, this may be too dark. But once I fire it, I'm not sure you'll be able to see the filament anymore, but I'm going to give it a try because I don't actually have a lot of light colored transparent glass. And this is that same crazy blue that's going to react on me and turn chartreuse green. So I think I'm going to try to find another blue. But I don't have any red. I would prefer red. We'll have to see what I can find. Once you've pretty much ruined your lip balm, you want to write glass on it, because you do not want to make the mistake of using this on your lips, because you may get little glass shards in it. So this is now a glass fusing tool. I really want red and I don't have it. So I think I'm going to cut a few of them where both layers are Tecta, and then I just use powder. I have red transparent powder and garnet red transparent powder. So I will stack it and then sprinkle it with powder and see how that turns out, because I really want red. More and more of my house is being pressed into glass service, so now we're in the landing at the top of my staircase, and I've set up my Taurus saw up there. Once you're done, you end up with a whole bunch of really greasy glass, which you need to clean up, and your hands are covered with the greasy grit. So you definitely want to wash your hands immediately, wash your glass immediately, so you don't accidentally rub your eye or get this stuff all over the place. You could, I suppose, use some type of finger protection. I don't, because I don't slide my fingers along the glass. I put it in a spot and I hold it there, And since my cuts are pretty flat, I don't really have a lot of sharp edges, but if you were worried about that, you definitely could wear some type of finger protection. I think you can buy it at glass supply houses, because I've seen these little, like those little rubber fingertips things that people use when they're filing. Do use safety goggles, because even though it has this eye shield, it's still kicking up a bunch of wet grit, and I'm just definitely not gonna do this without safety goggles on. It's much easier to cut this with the Taurus saw, but I still need a lot of practice because my shapes are not perfect. But I'm gonna put them in for a full fuse, so I'm hoping that any little imperfections will disappear with the full fuse. This way I do have to nip, because I did leave a little bit of a rough spot there. So I'll just nip that off. Okay. I decided to do just a couple with colored glass over top. And then I'm going to do a couple with the frit. So I have to get them all cleaned. Next step is create the filament that's going to go between the two layers of glass. And I have silver and copper, and I have nichrome wire. This time, this one I did with the nichrome wire. I'm not really all that thrilled with how dark it is, so I'm going to try it with the silver and copper. Okay, so I'm going to take my pieces of wire, a little off center, hold it with my round nose pliers, and loop it around. Make it nice and straight. Grab with the round nose pliers near that loop, wrap it around, straight down. Oops, don't pull too tight. And I have my little filament. And silver wire is a little bit thicker, but much easier to work with than the high fire wire. But I will have to use the high fire wire to make the hanger, because the silver and the copper will not survive. Yeah. I really should take some time grinding these down to get them to perfect. I'm not going to do that. So I just matched them with the ones that they work best with. I'm going to take all the filaments, trim the little legs so they're the same length, and straighten them out as much as possible. So I want them to match and be straight. When you're cutting them, you need to make sure that they're going to go under the transparent glass and leave a little bit so that they can go underneath the cap of the light bulb as well. So that one I cut a little bit short. I really want to cut them longer than that. I'll still be able to use it, but I want them longer. So I want them to be able to go from up here, where they're going to be covered with the opaque glass, all the way down into the bulb. And it would be nice if they reached the fattest part, but that would be just getting fussy. So I don't really need to do that. Cut a few, see how you like them. If you need to, you can go back and cut more. See, some of these are silver and some of them are copper. I know the nichrome wire works. So I'm going to glue the filaments in place, making sure to go above that shoulder there so that part of it will be buried in the cap of the bulb. And I did various lengths because I just want to see what works best. And all my trials get written down in my book so that if I decide to do these next year, I can make adjustments. On top of them, before they go into the kiln, oops, sorry for the bump, I'm going to put a little dusting of clear powder because it helps with air bubbles. I find that I don't get as many air bubbles in the piece. So you need to mask up. I use a tea strainer, and this is crystal clear transparent powder. Oops, that one I got too much, so I'm going to wash it off and start again. I'm going to scritch with my fingernail to get just a little bit. Just a light coating. And I'm going to do the whole bulb, even at the top. And then I'm going to put the cap on it. In my preparation for these ornaments, I cut a bunch of the little caps. Let me go get those. I'm going to use the preformed nichrome hooks, nichrome wire hooks. I don't like them to be just a loop, so I put them around on pliers, pinch, so you get a nice circular loop. Do you need to do that? Nope. I like the look better. And then I go in with my round nose pliers. And I make a twist so the glass has something to fuse around. And it will not slide back out. I'm not going to go in, and what I usually do is I would put the plier back in, twist to straighten it out. In this case, I actually want it to look just like that. Doesn't matter whether you bring the loop all the way around tight to touch the wire, or you leave it open a little bit, but you do have to make it symmetrical. So however you decide to do it, just do it the same way on both sides. If it's a little twisted, it's easier to insert if it's flattened. So if they lay nice and flat, it'll make assembly and getting them into the kiln a little bit easier. If they're not exactly flat, it'll probably still work anyway, but I do like to give them a little bit of a flatten just to make my job a little bit easier later on. I believe these stringers are 2 millimeter, and I think they're a little bit too thick. So this year I went back and I bought 1 millimeter, not just for this project, but when I'm making ornaments of snowmen, these make really great snowman arms. I usually just snap them with my fingers, and I do 2 that are the same length, and then 1 that's a little bit shorter. So make sure they're all straight, all the filaments are the way you want them to be. Then you're going to glue the cap and the hook on each bulb. If there's a reaction between the two metals, I try not to let them touch, but if there's a reaction between the two metals, it's going to be behind the opaque glass. for the most part. If it's too close to the transparent glass, it's much more likely that you'll see any reaction. So I don't really like them to touch. And you'll see those two are touching. So I'm going to pull that up a little bit because I don't want those two metals to touch. Oops. And then you need to put the caps on. And everything is wiggly and it wants to move around. So now I've got a couple different color caps. I think this color will look better with the yellowy glass. So I just pop that in place. Make sure it's over the legs of the filament and over the hook. I think this grayer brown will look better with the green. I'm not sure with the red. So I'm going to do one with the grayer color and one with the softer, like a warmer brown. These, nope, I was going to say they're ready for the kiln. They are not. Because the next is going to be the stringers to make it look like the part that you screw in to the socket. So I'm going to put some glass tack and then just fit the threads. And I usually put one on the bottom. It's longest. That's so toward the right. The next longer one toward the left, and the short one either left or right, depending on how that particular setup looks. Make sure they're parallel and about the same distance apart. And that one is ready for the kiln. And however you do this is perfectly fine. I sometimes like to do everything really symmetrically and the same way, because then I can throw a whole bunch in the kiln at the same time and assemble quickly. Although I'm noticing as I go through this series, I don't do anything quickly. It takes me forever to do this. And I put too much glue, so it's going to be a little bit inclined to slide. I think that's the biggest problem with putting too much glue. It burns off in the kiln, so I don't know that it's really that big of a deal. I run the kiln in a ventilated room, but it does make things tend to slide around while you're trying to build, which is kind of a pain. So you don't really want to glop on the glue to make it easier on yourself. So those that have colored glass will just go in the kiln. The last two, I need to sprinkle transparent powder on. And I'm going to need to be careful because I want to get it on this part of the glass, but I don't want it on the cap. Here's another one ready for the kiln. Just a little snowman in a snow scene. But these little tiny 1mm stringers work really well for trees and snowman arms. The last two, mask up, sprinkle on powder. I'm going to label the tray with the garnet. Put the garnet here, plain red here, so if I decide to do them in the future, I'll know which was which. So that I don't get it on the cap, I'm going to use a piece of cardboard to mask it off. And I'm going to put a pretty thick layer on here because I really want the red to show up. I don't want it on that cap. And I think I got a little on the cap, so I might need to get a brush and fix it. Okay. I do it on top of paper. Oh, see, I did. I got it on the cap. So I'm going to use a little tiny brush to get off the cap. Make sure everything is straightened out. And that one is ready for the kiln. And that is the garnet. So that's going to go in the labeled section. And I always save my extra powder. After a few last adjustments to make sure everything is straight and the way I want it, these are going in for a full fuse. I'm going to put these in the Paragon kiln because it's a lot smaller and I'm not really fusing a lot this time.
Next morning and they are done. The powder did not cover the entire bauble and the clear came out around the edge. Still looks kind of cool, but I'm not sure I'll do that again.
They are out of the kiln and cleaned up. I have to go back and take a look at which wire went in which color. I found the ones that there was no real reaction are not my favorite. These, where the wire reacted with that yellow glass, they are really cool. And the ones that I put the powder, I probably could fix that by putting powder on both layers. But I don't know, I kind of like the look. I'm definitely gonna make more. And I'm gonna make more with this yellow glass because it just looks so cool. I'm digging. This is Bullseye 1025-50. It is a striker and it is selenium and sulfur bearing, so would definitely react with copper, silver, and it also reacts with lead.